Good morning, year three, and welcome to your first comprehension session this week. So today is the 1st of February 2021, and we are in week 5 of remote learning. So with me today, you will be looking at a fiction text, and this fiction text was sent with your task sheet to your parents end of last week. So the fiction text we will be looking at today is called Grandma's Indian Summer by Jamila Gavin. So this is what the text looks like. Okay, so that's the text. And this is the text we will be practicing to answer together. And then this is the question sheet. Okay, now remember, in order for you to get the full marks that the question is giving you, depending on your answers, you need to do exactly what the question is asking you to do. So, for example, number 1 says, list all the people who were in the carriage at the beginning of this extract. And that question is worth 2. Okay, so you need to make sure you list the people down. And you know that the list, because it's because it's a line, you will be listing the people down using commas. Okay. Well, okay, now let's get into the text. So I have some listening questions for you here on the side. So whilst I'm reading the text to you, I want you to think about the answers to these questions. Okay, so your listening questions are: do you think Nita and Sanjay have spent a lot of time with their great grandmother before this? Explain your answer. It was a torrent of living creatures. And that's in paragraph 4. What does the word torrent mean? What are the clues in this text that the story is set in a different time and place from where you live? Okay. So I'm going to start reading this to you now. Grandpa's Indian Summer by Jamila Gavin. The horses set off clip-clopping their hooves, echoing down the broad Calcutta streets. Neetu and Sanjay studied the old lady who sat before them all wrapped up in her shawl. Is great-grandma really going to bathe in the river? They asked in puzzled voices. Oh, yes, said Grandpa Chatterjee. The river has become the most important place in her life. They stared out of the carriage windows as the horses trotted out into the road and joined a human river, a river of people who swept through that huge city, pulling things, pushing things, carrying things on their backs and on their heads. There were those who were riding on bicycles, mopeds and rickshaws, or in trams and buses. It was a torrent of living creatures, among which wandered dogs and pigs and horses and cows, where birds swooped and flapped and squawked and soared over the rooftops with the hundreds of fluttering paper kites. Then Grandpa cried out, "Look!" They saw the huge curving girders of a bridge, which stretched over a wide expanse of shining water. It looked as though it had been built to carry the weight of the whole of mankind. When they had crossed to the other side, they made their way along the river until they came to a place where many people had gathered. So, what we're going to do now is a questions app. Actually, before we do the questions app, we're going to answer these questions. So, it says for question number 1. Do you think that Nita and Sanjay have spent a lot of time with their great-grandmother before this? Can you explain your answer? Can you think about and explain your answer? Fantastic. The answer is no, because it says here, Neetu and Sanjay studied the old lady who sat before them all wrapped up in her shawl. If they had spent a lot of time with her, they wouldn't be sitting there studying her. They wouldn't be sitting there looking at her up and down, looking at what she's doing and how she's behaving. Okay. Then question number 2 is, it was a torrent of living creatures. What does the word torrent mean? What do you think it means? Put your thinking caps on and tell me what you think it means by reading between the lines. Okay, it says it was a torrent of living creatures among which wandered dogs, which means overpouring, overcrowding. So lots of them. Every time, wherever they looked, there were just loads and loads and loads of creatures. So overcrowded amount of creatures. Then the last question says, what are the clues in this text that the story is set in a different time and place from where you live? So if you look over here, it says, their houses echoing down the broad Calcutta streets. So first of all, you know that they are not living in a time. So first of all, you know that they are not living in a place where you live, because you don't live anywhere where there's a Calcutta street. Okay, and then on top of that, you can tell that they're living in a different time because they're talking about how so many animals are on the road, and bicycles, mopeds, and rickshaws. Yeah. And so there's a lot of transport available as well. Fantastic. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to answer these questions. So we're going to zap these questions and then crack them. Okay, so question number 1 says, list all the people who were in the carriage at the beginning of this extract. So we know that the beginning of this extract is around here. Okay, so it's these 3 paragraphs. Now, can you list all the people that you think are in the beginning of this extract? Okay, I'm going to pause the video now and you try and answer the question. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the people that I think are in the beginning. So it says the horses set off clip-clopping their hooves, echoing down the Calcutta street. Neetu and Sanjay studied the old lady who sat before them all wrapped up in a shawl. Great grandma, yeah, and then Grandpa Chatterjee. That's who I feel like are in the beginning of the extract. So I'm going to copy it. Now let's answer it. So Neetu, Sanjay, great grandma, and Grandpa Chatterjee. Yeah, should we check it? So fantastic. So that was correct. So if you've got these 4 people, then you get 2 marks. Okay, now let's go to question number 2. Let's go back to all the questions. So question number 2, it says, what does the word puzzled in paragraph 2 tell you about Neetu and Sanjay's reaction to the idea of the great grandmother bathing in the river? So I'm going to highlight this just because I feel like that's going to help me answer. What I would like you to do is pause the screen now and work out what the answer is. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So now let's work it out. So it says, is great grandma really going to bathe in the river? They asked in a puzzled voice. So when you're puzzled, it obviously means that you don't quite understand. So I'm going to write down, they didn't understand why she wanted to bathe in the river. Okay, shall we check it now? So if you have got any of these 2, then you are correct. Okay, so if you have they did not understand it, or they think it is an unusual thing to do, because it's unusual because people don't usually bathe in rivers, have baths, right? They bathe in homes, in their homes, in their bathrooms. Then you get 2 marks if you've got any of these. Okay, so now let's go back to let's go back to the questions. Number 3, I'm going to clear all the other. So, the horses trotted out into the road and joined a human river. Paragraph 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That one is paragraph 4, and it says the horses, human river. Okay. Why do you think the author chose to use the underlined word in the sentence? So why do you think the author used the word river in this sentence? Yeah, because humans can't be river, right? It's water that's river. So can you think about what he's trying to say and why do you think he used that word? Okay, I'd like you to pause the video now and try and answer the question. Okay, fantastic. We're ready to answer it now? So I think it means the horses trotted out into the road and joined a human river. I mean that she's trying to, I think that she's trying to say that it was very overcrowded, so very busy. So she was trying to say the area was very busy and overcrowded with people. Okay, should we check it? So if you've got any of these 3 answers, then you are correct and you get a mark. So if you've got the answer, the sentence before was talking about a real water river, then that's correct. So because it's trying to say how they were talking about a water river, then they moved on to talking about how it was a human river. She wants you to imagine how busy it is. Fantastic. So then if you've got, and that's exactly what I've got. I've written the area was very busy, overcrowded with people. So then you could, you get a mark for that. Or if you've got people are all moving along together, then you've got a mark for that. So now let's go to question number 4. And question number 4 says, how do you think Neetu and Sanjay felt looking out of the carriage windows? So where were they talking about the carriage windows? They were talking about the carriage windows on paragraph 4. So it says, let's read it to find out or to understand how they were feeling. Okay, it says they started out of the carriage they stared out of the carriage windows as the horses trotted out into the road and joined a human river, a river of people who swept through that huge city, pulling things, pushing things, carrying things on their backs and on their heads. They were those who were riding on bicycles, mopeds, in rickshaws, or in trams and buses. It was a torrent of living creatures, among which wandered dogs and pigs and horses and cows, where birds swooped and flapped and squawked and soared over the rooftops with the hundreds of fluttering paper kites. So how do you think Neetu and Sanjay felt when they were looking out of the window? I'm going to pause the screen now, and I'd like you to try and work out the answer. So I'm going to highlight some things of what they saw. Okay, so they saw a river of people who were pushing and pulling things and carrying things. Okay, they saw all these living creatures and they saw birds. Okay, so I could say, I could say that they felt amazed at seeing people carrying things on their heads and backs. Okay, now let's check the answers. So if you've got surprised at some of the unusual things they saw, such as people carrying things on their heads, or frightened by the birds swooping, flapping and squawking, or amazed by the dogs, pigs, horses and cows in the street, then your answer is correct. Now, let's go to question number 5. So question number 5 says, it was a torrent of living creatures among which wandered dogs and pigs and horses and cows. Paragraph 4. Okay, so there. The author chose to link these animals using and instead of just commas. Why do you think she did that? Okay, I want you to try and answer that. So why do you think she used and instead of a comma? Okay, pause the video now and try and work out your answer. Okay, so now let's see what the answer is. So so the question says, why do you think that the author used and instead of commas? And I've written to show that there were lots of animals to emphasize, okay, how many, so to emphasize how many different animals there were. Okay, now let's check it. So if you've got any of these answers, then you are correct and you get a mark. So it says you can have to make it seem as if they just keep coming. Okay, so the animals keep coming. It sounds as if there are more of them this way. So yeah, so it sounds like there are lots of them. Okay. To emphasize the range of different things. Fabulous. So if you've got any of those, then you are correct. Now let's do question number 6. So question number 6 says, number the places to show the order in which Nita and Sanjay saw them. So the 4 things that you have here are a very busy road, a place where people gathered, wide empty streets, and a bridge. So if you have a read through this, okay, if you have a read through this, then you can put those 4 things in order. I'm going to pause the video now and you try and work out your answer. Okay, so I know that the last thing is a place where people gathered. Okay, then it says a bridge, or I know then there was a bridge here somewhere. They saw a huge curtain of a bridge. Yeah. And then it was a very busy road, a place where people gathered, wide empty streets. So first, there were wide empty streets. Okay. And then there was a very busy road, which is here. Yeah, this whole paragraph here. Then there was a bridge, and then it was where people gathered. So I think the correct order is wide empty streets. Then they came across a very busy road. That's the road where they saw all the animals and people carrying things on their heads and their backs. Then there was a bridge. And then there was a place where people gathered. So I feel like that's my answer. And that is correct. Yeah, so that is the order in this, the order in the way things happened. Okay, because they first started off on an empty road, then they went on to the carriage, and they all they saw was a busy street, and then they then they saw a bridge, and then a place where people gathered. Okay, so now that is our that's our practice questions done. Okay, so I hope you picked up your comprehension skills from this to see how you can find the answer in the text. Now it is time for you to do your independent task. So your independent task is this sheet here. Okay, it's the story is called The Man Whose Mother Was a Pirate, and again you were sent this with your task sheets. Okay, if you just bear with me, I'm going to make it big for you so you can have a look properly. So now this is the story that you should be trying independently. It's called The Man Whose Mother Was a Pirate. So if you cannot print the sheet off and you have no other way to access it, you can just pause the screen here now and read the story. So this whole section is just the story. Yep, that's the story. So pause the screen here now and have a good read. And then these are your questions. I'm going to pause it I'm going to pause it from question 1 to 5. And then you've got questions 6 to 9. Okay, fantastic. Year 3, what I would like you to do is once you have finished your independent comprehension task, please upload your work to Tapestry for me to have a look at.